All right, guys, welcome back to Average Home Theater. We are doing part two of our Back to the Future discussion, myself and Dominic. How you doing, man?
It's always a pleasure.
I guess it's good to be out of school.
It's good to be out of school. It's nice to have some time off to reflect.
Yeah, I envy
And
you. That old 10-week vacation.
hey,
But trust me,
I
look, I'm not passing judgment. I worked in a school for 5 years. I know y'all need
uh-huh.
it. I'm just gonna every now and then I may make fun of you, but just understand
Right.
it's all in good fun because I see what teachers go through every day.
Hey, I used to make fun of it before I was in education,
Ah,
because because I've worked retail, I've done management, I've done advertising, and you definitely need that reset, you
oh,
know.
there's no doubt. I mean, I was a school resource officer as a police officer, and I needed the reset. I was ready to go back on patrol for 10 weeks. So I understand what it's like.
That's awesome.
But anyway, so yeah, well, little disclaimer, guys. I have been very busy at work. We have a bunch of deadlines coming up, and I'm leaving for vacation in 2 days. So I haven't had time to rewatch Back to the Future Part 2. So even though this is, I guess, quote unquote, my channel, Dominic took notes. He recently watched it and he's going to kind of take the lead. But I've seen the movie many times, so I don't think it's going to be an issue. But we're just
Hey,
going to roll with it, baby.
I'm not complaining. It's not like, I had to watch Kingdom of the Crystal Skull again.
Oh, yeah, no, no, it's just, I would quit. I'd say, you know what? It's been a fun little hobby, but I'm done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no kidding. And as we're jumping into Back to the Future too, like obviously we loved the first one, and I know arguably the first one is probably the more like Oscar worthy, the one that's it's really straightforward, right? He,
Well, it's the
he
original. It's like anything else. It's the original.
right. Yeah, it's the original, and outside of the time travel, it's pretty straightforward. He goes to the past, he messes it up, he spends time with dad, he fixes it, he comes back home.
Right.
This Back to the Future 2 is very dense, especially for its time. There's a lot going on. And I can see general audiences starting, they may not appreciate the depthness like we do because it's not as casual as a viewing as the
Right.
first one is. You know what I mean?
My
But
wife can't watch it because she starts going cross-eyed thinking about, okay, she's like, where are they going? Why are they
right.
going back? So she's never watched the movie all the way through. She sees bits and pieces and she's
Uh-huh.
and she's trying to figure out what's going on. I'm like, if you're not gonna sit here and
Right.
watch the movie from start to end, go in another room.
Yeah,
Because
you can't.
I'm not gonna pause it and give you the whole rundown because there's a lot going on. But if you just watch it, it's pretty easy to follow. It's not that
Right.
complicated, you know?
Yeah, it's just, definitely the first viewing, and even for its time in the 80s, like Avengers, I don't know how vast you are in Marvel, but Avengers Endgame,
I don't do Marvel.
well, Endgame borrows heavily from this. Like spoilers for Avengers Endgame, but they actually go back into the other movies to fix something that happened. So they borrow a lot from Back to the Future too. And they're not the only ones. Two, I'm saying right off the top, is definitely my favorite of the three. They're all
Really?
good. They're all weighted well, but two is the one. It's
Look,
it might sound simple, but it's all the future stuff. It just, as a kid, that was just
and I go back and forth. At one point, I was the first one, right? First was the best
uh-huh.
one. Don't even talk to me.
Right.
Then it became part two,
Mm-hmm.
where man, this movie, for all intents and purposes, it probably is a better movie than the first one, right? And I'm the same
Right.
way with the original Star Wars trilogy. Empire's clearly a better movie than the original one, but the original one's my favorite, right?
Right.
Well, I'm in a place now, and producer Nick is the same way. The third one is my favorite one to watch.
Of Back to the
I
Future.
Yes, I love Back to the Future 3.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but we'll get to that whenever we get to Back to the Future 3. So
Yeah.
let's get going.
Okay. So, we start off with a recreation of the last scene of the first movie, right? Which,
Yeah.
like I said before, it's technically the beginning of the next adventure, right? Because you have, he almost kisses his girlfriend. He's back from being gone a week, although to everyone else, it's just the next day. And Doc shows up. He's modified the time machine. Now it flies and it doesn't need
Mr.
plutonium
Fusion.
anymore. Yeah, it's got Mr. Fusion. And that's pretty cool because they would have called that kind of retconny, but they did it in the first movie. So they
Right. They
already
did
knew
it
they
at
were
the
going to
end of
simplify.
the original movie.
Right. So that kind of, knocks that argument out. And I like that they did that. But Doc shows up and says, "Hey, there's a big problem. It's your kids." So I like the idea that Doc, he's done a lot of homework before he comes back to Marty. You
Mhm.
get the impression he's done a lot of time traveling on his own, found this out, went back to get Marty to fix a problem in the future,
Yeah.
right?
And
And then
it's
what they
funny
yeah, go ahead.
because, well, we know they had to recreate it because they got a different actress. They got Elizabeth Shue because the original
Hmm.
actress, from what I remember, she wasn't available. Like, I think her mom was dying or was very ill, something like that. So she wasn't available to play Jennifer in the second one. So they didn't fire her. They were
Right.
forced to go with Elizabeth Shue. And
I think
I
I
like
heard
Elizabeth
that
Shue
too.
fine, but I think the
Hmm.
original Jennifer was probably better than Elizabeth Shue because she tends to overact a little bit in this one. But
Right.
they did a really good job recreating it. I mean, it's
Oh
it's pretty
yeah.
damn good.
That's one of those recastings that don't bother me. Like it didn't disrupt the story at all. And I mean, I do like the first Jennifer too, but to be fair, she's not really in the movie a lot in the
Right. She
first one.
has what, maybe 5 or 6 minutes of total screen time,
Yeah, she's basically
maybe
at the
10
beginning
if
and at the end. Yeah. But no, that yeah, it seems like something unfortunate happened because she's one of those actresses. I haven't seen her, but she goes to a lot of the cons and stuff. I've seen stuff with her. The original Jennifer is what
mhm.
she puts on her stuff. Um, and that's not the only cast missing from the first one.
Oh,
Crispin
Crispin
Glover's gone
Glover,
as
yeah.
well.
Yep. And that
Yes,
whole
and
debacle, there's been a big old
yeah,
he had a falling out with Zemeckis, and then he sued them for using his likeness, because they based the prosthetics that they put on this actor to look like
uh-huh,
Crispin Glover,
right.
and it's just and I think he won the lawsuit. It was like an undisclosed amount, but he did win that lawsuit.
Okay, yeah, it's weird too because I can see both sides of it because when you watch the behind the scenes and the Zemeckis and Bob Gale, mostly Bob Gale talks about it. And it's cool. It's interesting because the idea for Back to the Future 2 was what if George McFly was dead? And the
Mhm.
reason they even thought of that is because they couldn't get him back because they say it was a money issue. He wanted what Michael J.
Right.
Fox
He
was
wanted
getting,
the same thing that Michael J. Fox wanted. They're like, but you're not the
right?
star.
But you're not the
And
star. And
and
yeah,
especially in the second one, you're really not the star.
right.
So,
And
I see both sides. I mean, there's no way
yeah,
in my um novice opinion, he does not deserve or didn't deserve the same amount of money as Michael J. Fox to make the second one, if that was really the issue. He claims
right.
it's not, but they
Yeah.
claim it is. So who really knows?
It's weird, yeah, because when you hear them talk about it on the behind the scenes stuff, you're like, okay, you side with them. Okay, maybe he was too big for his britches, all that. But then he came out a few years ago and did interviews, and
Right.
he's like very heartbroken over it. So
Yep.
then you hear his stuff, and you're like, okay, well maybe
Yeah,
it's
because they
weird. It's
make
like,
him out
yeah,
to be this crazy guy, but then you watch the
yeah,
interviews, it's like, he doesn't seem I mean, he may be, a
he's a little
little
eccentric.
he's an actor, but a
Yeah,
lot of them are.
yeah,
So, I
yeah,
don't know how much different he is than anybody else other than he probably wanted more money, and
right,
they didn't wanna give it to him, and it could be that simple, who knows, but whatever. Let's just move
yeah.
on.
But yeah, for whatever reason though, like that premise alone really makes the second movie interesting because we have that beginning and then they add a couple scenes to it, right? You see a cool shot of the DeLorean rise up
Lifting
from a
up,
side
yeah.
angle that you didn't get in the first movie. And then you obviously see Biff
Biff.
witness, yeah, the old, the Biff of the 80s witness the time machine flying off in the sky. Um, and it's a nice, cool shot. Then you have the clouds and the credits. Then we jump down into the Skyway, which, the highway in the sky. I love that Skyway.
It didn't
And
happen because 2015 was 8 years ago. So yeah, it didn't happen. They were a
that's
little
weird
off. They
too.
got a lot of things right, but they were a little off on that.
It's funny because as we go along, there is some stuff that we got around that time. You
Absolutely.
know, yeah. Um, so they go down the Skyway, and they're in
Well,
October 21st,
right.
2015.
So that's where, and you could tell they didn't know if they were going to do a sequel because it's all, well, why did you bring, after he knocks her out, why did you bring her?
Hmm.
He's like, well, I had to do something. I couldn't just leave her there with that information. So it's one of those
Right,
things they probably didn't really think it through and that they weren't really going to do a sequel. Then it's like, okay, well, now what do we do with her?
right, and we're getting right into that. They talk about that was an issue, so that's why they drug her at the beginning, so she's not involved in the opening act really. So they get there, and one of the little things my dad and I always quoted was, when he goes, "Here's our exit," and he
Yeah,
turns
yeah.
off, and then you see the Hill Valley sign floating. And what's funny is on the Hill Valley sign, it says Goldie Wilson Jr., Mayor.
Oh, man. I never
That's
noticed that.
that's a I know, and we were just talking about our love for Goldie Wilson and how you met the actor, and I thought that was a cool little Easter egg. Like I didn't notice that. This might have been the first time I noticed it because I was paying close attention because I
Yeah,
knew we
because
were doing
Goldie
this.
Wilson the third is the salesman,
Right.
right? Is
So
that right? Is Goldie Wilson the third?
I'm trying to think.
That's on the virtual billboard or 3D billboard that's talking about
Oh
the
yes,
car. He's the
yes,
car
yes. That
salesman.
were
He's like, "My
right.
grandfather, Goldie Wilson, was the
Was the mayor of
whatever."
Hill.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So yeah, that's I thought that was a cool little Easter egg. It's on the sign. But then the big thing is they land in the back alley. Um, Docs has the weather thing. He says, the weather service. I wish it was as efficient as the
Yeah, he says it
no,
backwards. I wish
yeah,
the
he says
post office was as efficient as the weather service.
right, and then today it's back. So they've mastered tracking the weather. And then one part I always thought was weird. I thought they could kind of do without it. Is when he said, "I went to a rejuvenation clinic," and he starts peeling the layers off his
Well, no, the
face.
reason they did that was because they didn't
Why
wanna
was
keep
that?
putting makeup on Christopher Lloyd's face. So they said, "Okay," 'cause he was
Mm,
only, like, 45, maybe close to 50 at the time. He wasn't that old, but Doc's supposed to be 70s. So,
okay.
because he had makeup on in the first one, then he didn't have it when he went back in time, when he went back to 1955. So, in order
Yeah.
to have present day Doc not, you know, have, it's all about makeup. They didn't wanna have to keep putting
Yeah.
makeup on him, so that's why they did that was, hey, that's
That
why
makes
Doc looks
sense.
so young because he went to a rejuvenation clinic.
Gotcha. Okay, so then they have that little thing, and one of the coolest parts, especially when I was a kid, is Marty gets the future gear. Right, he gets the Nike shoes that lace up on their own. He
Yeah,
has the retractable jacket. He
auto
has the
dry.
reflective hat. Yes, that's awesome. And Nike did a thing a few years ago where they,
Yeah, they did the power lace shoes.
yeah.
I don't know how
So
that
that
worked, but
it was probably like battery operated or something, but I remember it was like a limited thing, and it was on in 2015. I think they did it on the anniversary. So,
there's a little bit
um,
of a flub in this scene because, Doc is telling Marty what he needs to do. He needs to go and see Griff and all this good stuff, and right
right.
after he says that, he says, "And Biff is gonna ask you." He says Biff instead of Griff. So, Christopher Lloyd messed up his
Oh,
line, and it wasn't caught until it was too late. I watched it with the commentary, and Zemeckis and Bob Gale were on it, and they talked about it. They said around here he says Biff instead of Griff, and now
that's
I
funny.
can't watch the movie without noticing it.
I never caught that.
Yeah,
Wow. So, I mean, I guess you could chalk it up to them going to so many different timelines
right, and
that
it's the
that isn't.
same actor, and he
Yeah.
was, it's fine. Most people don't
Right.
even realize it, but once you hear it, you're gonna notice it every time.
Well, and honestly, kind of on a meta level, it kind of shows they're in over their head because they're starting to mix things up because they're not
Right.
supposed to know all this.
Hmm.
You know. So from there, Doc goes and looks through his little device to see if the sun is at the diner yet.
Right.
Basically, an iPhone.
Hmm.
It zooms in, it takes a picture. At that time, we didn't
It's a
even have
little
cell.
mobile device, yeah, a little
Yeah, so that's cool. It's basically an iPhone, and So he
He goes to
shows
the
them the
Cafe
newspaper,
80s. Oh, wait,
right?
yes, he goes into the Cafe 80s,
Mm-hmm.
um, and he's kinda waiting. You see the computer screen that talks to him. It was,
Okay.
Max
Yes.
Headroom. It was remember Max Headroom was huge in the '80s,
Right. So you have that 3D, like,
and it goes, "Even
block.
in the afternoon."
No, 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 no. Yes.
Yeah.
And then the two guys are arguing on the
Mhm.
screen, and he goes, "All I want is a Pepsi."
I guess
You
Pepsi
know?
was a major sponsor for
Oh,
Back to the
huge.
Future.
And what's funny is he's in that same diner that he was in the 50s, and he's still having the same problem with ordering a Pepsi.
Ordered a Pepsi. All I want's a
Yeah.
Pepsi.
Yeah.
And then we see a young Elijah Wood.
Yes.
He
Yeah.
at the Wild Gunman, and it's you could tell this is where you start to notice after you've seen the movies a few times how
Hmm.
part two and three were so connected because
Right.
you got the Wild Gunman. That's basically a foreshadowing event for part three, and
Right.
then the whole chicken thing because that never happened in the first one.
Okay. I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Griff comes in and he's got to tell Griff no, and then he accuses him of being chicken, and then he just can't walk away. So
Right.
that's here's where they start laying the ground. You could tell these two movies were filmed back to back because they knew at this point they had a plan. They knew what they were gonna do.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Because in the first movie, Marty
opposite of
doesn't
George
change.
Lucas. What?
In the first movie, Marty doesn't change. George is the one who goes through the character arc.
Hmm.
So, but in this one, over the course of 2 and 3, Marty eventually goes through a character arc where he's not making any rash decisions anymore. He doesn't work off his anger. He begins to let go of that. But
Yeah,
yeah, so they have the chicken thing, and I wrote that down as well. And that's when Griff comes in, right? Which is Biff's,
yeah. Griff is his
yeah,
grandson.
his
Because
grandson.
old Biff. Oh, that's right. We forgot. Old Biff was like, "You're Marty Jr." And hello, hello. He hits him with the cane, and
Yeah.
he's like, "You're old man." He's like, "What happened to no George McFly?" I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about his kid, Marty
Yes.
McFly Sr., and he tells him how he's a
And
loser and flushed his life down the
right.
toilet. So Marty's starting to think, okay, what happened to me? What's
Hmm.
going on? You know?
Yeah, because old Biff thinks that's Marty's son, but it's
Right.
actually Marty
Hmm.
because of the timeline. His son happens to look like him. So there's a whole bunch there, and then Griff comes in with his posse, his gang, and it's just like the lunchroom scene in the 50s. Like you get that POV shot over Griff's shoulder, or Marty's looking up, just like you got in the cafeteria. Um, but they have all the high tech gear. He has bionic implants, and all this weird stuff like that. You got the girl with the scar and the thing on her finger.
Got no
Um,
scrote.
yeah, that was yeah. I remember. Yeah, I think all the men remember that scene because
That's
you,
important.
yeah.
So
Um,
he
Go ahead.
then the classic chase scene. They have another, just like in every Back to the Future movie, there's
Right.
Biff and his crew is always chasing Marty. So you
Yeah, I
have
love
it,
it.
but instead of a skateboard, it's the hoverboard, and then the hoverboard scene is awesome. I
It
mean,
still
I
looks good.
remember it does. I was watching, I was like, that still holds up. It
It
still really
does,
does look
man.
good. And they were so convincing that in the '80s, people thought it was real. I remember kids, I mean, I was 9 years old when this came out. I remember people talking like, oh, dude, that's real. And there was like specials on TV where they were talking about hoverboards. Is it real or not? I mean, that was a huge deal. People really
That's
thinking that
crazy.
was real.
No, that's funny. And like, I mean, there's like the one shot when he gets that. What is that? The big one he takes out of the suitcase.
Oh, the
Um,
bulldog or whatever,
the
the one that's
bull.
got
You
the
can
power.
Yeah, you can kind of see that's digital in like a shot or
Yeah.
two, but overall, like it
Yeah,
holds
like
up
whenever they
well.
have the wide shots of the people,
Right.
they're suspended from a crane or something, but you
Yeah.
really you really can't tell. Like I watched like the first 30 minutes of it last night, and I
Uh
was
huh.
looking for wires and wiring harnesses, and I couldn't see it. Like I
No,
didn't,
it looks great.
except for
It
the
holds up.
crash. whenever they crash in the
They like
building,
fall, kind of how they fall up. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, the girl, the stunt double, she was severely injured. She broke several bones and all kind of stuff in that. And if you watch the scene, she hits a pillar. When she goes in, she
Uh-huh.
hits a pillar first and goes in, and she was severely injured doing that stunt. But and that's the only you could tell she's
I
on a
didn't know that.
wire, but
Wow.
yeah, it's they talk about it on the commentary track about how
That's
she suffered
interesting.
severe injuries in that. So they did it in one take. It looked great,
Yeah.
but the girl got hurt.
Wow. I didn't know that. So yeah, that whole scene, and like he even steals the skateboard from the girl, like he took the skateboard from the boys in the
Yeah,
50s.
yeah,
They do all that. And basically the end of it is they they crash into the courthouse, which is now a mall in the
right.
future, right? And Marty, he gets out unscathed, and then Doc shows up, and this whole thing was designed so that he would stop his son from getting involved in a robbery with Griff.
Which is right
But
next to you. That's
right,
right
right,
next to
yes,
you.
this right here. So, and this is actually this is Future Doc
Oh,
in
cool.
2015.
I
Yeah.
got
And then
I have 1955 doc.
that's cool. I like that one too. And then this one is Future Marty, you know.
Oh, sweet. My brother has them
Yeah.
all. I'm pretty sure my
I
brother
haven't
has all of them.
I still need the Griff one. I think the Griff one is the only one I'm missing. But um so yes,
So it
he's there to
changes. They
stop.
see the newspaper change, kind of like the picture did in the
Mhm.
first one.
Exactly. And then again, you know, uh, Doc tells him, you fixed it not in the way I intended, but because you've diverted them and they've gotten in trouble with the law, that robbery will never take place. Thus, future history has been altered. And this is the proof, right? He says that whole thing, which it's kind of weird that they go to the future to fix a future event, but it doesn't bother me because you get all this cool future stuff. And something I didn't mention, um, when he first walks out of the alley and sees the that Hill Valley strip in the future, you see like a lot of cool little things, like the Texaco is now all automated, right? There's
Yeah.
no humans outside like it was in the 50s. You see, there was a couple other things I wanted to mention. Um,
Jaws 19, which was making
yes,
fun of
Jaws
Spielberg.
19,
But Spielberg probably liked that
right?
because he only did the first one, and he didn't want any sequels, if I'm not mistaken. He didn't want any sequels made.
Right. Yeah, he just did the first one and then moved on.
Right. But at
With
this
Jurassic
point,
Park, he did too. Yeah.
by 1989, I think Jaws 4 was already out by 89. So there
Yeah,
was already
probably.
three sequels to the first one.
Wow. So
I know
yeah, they
there
would have
was
just
1, 2. I
assumed.
know 2 and 3 were out for sure, but I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure part 4 was done before this movie came out.
that's yeah. So that they're obviously making fun of that, which in an inside joke kind of way, which is cool. And something I wanted to mention too is it says no landing instead of no parking. Because you have all the flying cars, you got some of them sprinkled around. And Goldie Wilson the third, when he's selling the flying car on
Mhm.
the advertisement, you can get it for like 39,000 something. So
Right.
so
That
for
was like a lot of
40,
money, I guess.
and now like 40,000 is like pretty average for a decent
Dude,
vehicle.
that's about an average price. If you get something for less than 40,000, it's either pretty bad off or it's
Right.
just a very base model, inexpensive vehicle. Anything that's just middle of the road is going to be 40,000
Hmm.
plus nowadays.
Yeah, I know. That's something that I noticed that was funny. And also there was something else with that. Oh, Marty sees the almanac,
Right.
right? And that's when he sees it then, and then I think all the crazy stuff happens with the
And then he
gang.
goes back and buys it.
Then he goes back and buys it, yes. And then that's, Doc says, hardly recreational reading material, Marty. Look, I got props today.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, it was at a con a few years ago. I mean, it's like like a journal or a notebook,
Oh, okay. But
but just
still, it's awesome.
the fact that it has that on it and that And what's cool is the receipt is like the one in the movie.
Dude,
So that's
that's
pretty
awesome.
cool. Yeah.
Well, you see,
Um,
I'm going to meet, like I said in the last video, I'm going to meet Christopher Lloyd in a few weeks.
uh-huh.
Man, I wish I could find something like that.
Oh, to
Get
get him
a
to sign it or something?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
would be, yeah, that's cool. Well, who knows? They might have something there like that.
Well, I
Um,
mean, they normally have their pictures and stuff, but that'd be awesome to get them to sign something like that. And I could get the others if I ever meet any of the others, because I know Leah Thompson does them, Michael J. Fox does them,
uh-huh.
Thomas Wilson does them. So all those guys do cons. So
Yeah.
I'd love if I get any opportunities to meet any of those people, I'm gonna meet them.
Yeah, no, that's cool because they're getting up there in age as well, and they're more available now because they're doing those cons. So yeah, that would be like definitely something you'd want to get. Um,
So they're talking
yeah,
about it, and then of course Biff overhears that Doc
hmm,
invented a time machine and all that good stuff. And he
right.
picks up the almanac, and that's where he gets the idea, obviously, to steal the time machine when he gets his first opportunity.
Hmm. So, but obviously, Doc throws it in the trash. They leave.
Oh,
They
that's where
don't
they see the
know.
officers.
Right. They don't know Biff knows that. They're too caught up in the fact that the girlfriend got, apprehended by the police and they think she's the Jennifer of the
Right.
future. And so obviously Doc and Marty don't interfere because they would have nothing to say
Age
but make it more
age
complicated.
46. Wow, that's a hell of a good
That's
facelift.
yeah. Um and
I'm
so
42 and whew, I don't look like I did when I was 19 or 20, that's for sure.
yeah, so they assume she's her and then it cuts here because then we're at night.
Mhm.
you know, because Doc says the Skyways jam is going to take us forever to get there, and this stays here.
In
I
the
invented a time
trash.
machine, yeah, to not to win at gambling, to travel through time. He says something like that. They leave and they go to Hilldale at night, right?
Right.
That's and to pick up Jennifer. Jennifer's brought home by the police. They do the finger scanner on the door. Like we have those now,
Your
you
fingerprint never
know.
changes. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, we do have them now. I
but
mean,
even
to
the door
open your
thing.
cell phone, we use it.
Right. So that was something that they got right. At the time that we didn't even have phones like that.
Look, if
Um,
you would have told me in 1989 that we would have phones and that I would record YouTube videos using that phone to
mm,
make a podcast for about 20 people to watch, I'd have told
yeah.
you were crazy.
Well, and I was in the generation where the teachers used to tell us, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket, when you're an adult, but we do.
But we do. We have 'em everywhere we go.
Yeah. Um, oh, and then the cop tells Jennifer, be careful in the future. And yeah, but she's saying it as in like just in the
Yeah.
days ahead. But when I was a kid, I always took it like Jennifer did, like, oh, this is the future, because of all the flying cars and stuff. But that's a fun little thing. And
Oh, remember
you meet,
whenever
yeah,
Marty realized that Hilldale, he's like, "This is bitching," because when he was young, Hilldale was where the rich people lived, and now it's
yeah.
like the hood, you know?
That was funny. Yeah, again, he's looking all around.
This
That
is
was
bitching.
funny. And yes, and he stupidly, he's all caught up and he sees another little cool thing and is the dog that
The
walks
dog
itself
being
with
walked
the
is yeah, yeah.
yeah, the dog walks itself by like a collar monitor and then Marty just leaves the door open and follows the dog and goes to the house.
And so
So,
that's where Biff steals
right.
the now there's a lot of debate that things would have changed once Biff went back. But then it's funny, they explained it on, once again, The Big Bang Theory. That's another reason why I love the show because of all the pop culture in it. But
Right.
they have an episode where they're discussing Biff going back in time and changing things. And so they're like, well, it all would have changed. And like, well, not necessarily, because he doesn't change it until this time, then it would skew this timeline, and they were in this current timeline, and it's like Austin Powers said, "Oh my God, I've gone cross-eyed," you know.
Right. Yeah. That's where it starts to get dicey. You're right because I didn't see that episode, but Biff changes the past. Then he goes back to 2015 as they're leaving Hilldale, right?
And he
And they
dies.
right. So technically, you're right. Like it could have been different, but I guess they took it as they're about to leave. They're not still walking around. But you're right. There could have been something there. And then you have the argument, like you said, that well, maybe it's a different timeline that
Right.
they're in now versus that. So, but yeah, so Biff starts having a heart attack, right? And
Because of the
you don't
lifestyle that he led the whole
right.
time prior, but you don't as a first time watcher, you're like, "What's going on?"
Uh-huh.
But then it makes sense later on, oh, he died because he lived this crazy lavish lifestyle and, his heart gave out or whatever the case may be.
Right. And what's cool is have you seen the deleted scene on that?
I think I did, but it's
Because
been a while.
Back to the Future 2 has some good deleted scenes, and they actually originally he fades from existence in that
Yes, yes,
scene.
yes, I've seen that, where he
Yeah,
fades
now
away. Yeah.
uh-huh.
It
But
makes you wonder why they changed it. I don't know.
their argument for it was that they didn't want to lose people, because I guess it's open to interpretation that happens. But yeah, you don't actually see him fade, and I think the fade is cool. Um, oh, and then here, as they're leaving Hilldale with Jennifer, that they've gotten
Release the
back,
director's cut. No, I'm joking.
yeah, they get Jennifer back, right? And she has that whole thing where the old one says I'm young, and the
Yeah,
the
she
young
says
one
I'm
says I'm
old.
old. Yeah, that was funny. They get Jennifer out. They take off because they're all intents and purposes they're done. They stopped the son from messing up with
Mhm.
Griff, so they're headed back to the 80s, right? And before they leave, he's putting stuff in Mr. Fusion. Doc is, and he says, you know, I'll never get to see my favorite historical year, the Old West. So another little
Another
Easter egg that
foreshadow,
they're going to
yeah.
go there. And he goes, I need to study. And then he goes, I need to set time aside to study the other great history of the universe, women.
Women. Yeah. Now, what
um,
was funny that we missed was when he was explaining to Marty what would happen if Jennifer bumps into her old future self, talking about how she
oh
could
yeah,
destroy the fabric of time and destroy the entire universe. Granted, that's the worst case scenario.
yeah,
Then he goes, "It could just be to our own galaxy." And Marty goes, "Well, that's a relief."
right.
That's a good line.
That
I
is a
mean,
good line.
Christopher Lloyd is so good at those
Oh my gosh, he was
delivering his
born for
line,
that.
just say yeah, I mean, he reminds me of Dan Aykroyd, like, Dan Aykroyd
Uh
in
huh.
Ghostbusters, he says all these just off the wall crazy things, little
Right,
monologues, but
but
he
to him, they're
loved
not
doing it.
crazy.
Right, to him,
Yeah,
it's not crazy, he loved doing it, he thought
yeah.
it was great.
He's 20 steps ahead. Yeah.
Yep.
But no, Doc, I mean, Christopher Lloyd was born to play that eccentric scientist, man.
Mhm.
Um, and so but we kind of skipped over. You do get to see Lorraine and Marty's dad as an elderly couple because they go to visit his
Yeah.
future self, and they do the whole thing with the pizza,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah, then Needles fires him, that's right, we've skipped all of that.
Yeah, yeah. Needles,
Flea baby.
nobody calls me chicken Needles.
Right.
Nobody. And then his boss is monitoring him. He loses his job. You're fired. Um, and Jennifer
Fujitsu-san,
witnesses all that.
konnichiwa.
McFly, I was monitoring that
No,
scan
he
you just
says
interfaced.
if you listen, he says McFry is what he says. You don't say
Yeah,
McFly. He says
yeah,
McFry.
his accent, yes. And yeah, that guy's no nonsense. And on the bottom of the screen, it says like dislikes like beer and like any kind of
Oh
wiggle
yeah,
room.
yeah. Anything
He's like,
fun, he hates it.
so that's funny. And Marty has the two ties, the old Marty. That's a style of the
Mhm.
future. All that
But yeah,
stuff.
I can't believe we completely glossed over Flea and playing Needles because you never hear about him in the
Yeah,
first movie either. But he's gonna come into play later on as well in part three.
right. Yeah, because we were talking about the Biff angle, but I'm checking over my notes, and after that, Biff has the heart attack. So they go back to the 80s, right?
Yeah.
And I love like just kind of the sound and the whole thing at night where they kind of land. Like I like that whole atmosphere. It kind of reminds me of Escape from New York a little bit.
Yeah, they do a good job with the DeLorean where it's flying and then there's a light
Light
pole,
post.
and that's used as when they splice the film together, however they did it back then, and then
Uh-huh.
their little it's just a neat little camera trick that they
That
use to
is.
transition.
Yeah, and I think it's a model and then it goes to the real car
Right, something
after
like
it.
that.
Yeah. So that was cool. They bring Jennifer to her house, they set her on the swing, and then your first indication that things have gotten messed up is Marty goes, I don't remember bars being on these
Yeah,
windows.
and then
And,
it's
and,
like,
and
"Okay, what else has changed now?" You know?
right. So then after that, that Marty, sorry, Doc brings Marty back to his neighborhood, and there's graffiti on the Lion Estate signs. That's your second
Mhm.
indication that things are messed up. After the graffiti on the sign, Marty gets to his house and the gate's locked. Another indication that things are wrong. And he jumps the fence. Again, when I was a kid, I wanted to jump fences because Marty did. I thought that was a cool little thing. But then he lands in his room, and
And it ain't
that's
his room.
that's one of the screams that like I remember when I think of movie screams. You know, the
Well,
African
he screams too. After
American family.
when she starts screaming, he screams too. He's like, "Ah, what are you doing?"
Yes. So, with everything changing, the McFlys do not live in that house. And, it's an African American family that's in there and it's the girl's room. And
But
then the
isn't it
dad comes,
interesting how 30 years in that future, the McFlys don't live in that house?
but in
I
the
don't know. But
first
then in the
one,
first one, they changed all of that stuff and they still live in the same house. But hey, it's Hollywood.
yeah.
They can't all be
Yeah. And
zingers.
well, and George, I guess you could chalk it up to George isn't that fancy of a guy. He probably doesn't care as much about, I don't know. He
Nah,
probably wanted to move there because it was cheaper
it's a
still.
movie about time travel. Move on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So then the dad comes in, Papa comes in with the bat.
Freeze, sucker! I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong
Gosh.
house. You got that right.
Yeah, he's like, you damn right you in the wrong house.
Yeah,
Gosh, and he's
that's a
just
good
swinging
scene.
the bat, knocking all the kids' stuff
I
over.
don't know who it
Marty,
was who somebody told me not that long ago. They thought that was Samuel L. Jackson for the longest time. I'm
oh
like,
no.
I mean, I guess he kind of looks like him, but no, I never thought that.
Well,
Mm.
and that actor was in a lot of like kind of like 80s like B movies. And one of them is called like something sucker, like I got you sucker. So there's definitely they're playing with that.
Ah,
Yeah, if you look him up, he's had some movies like that. The only reason I know that is because when I was in college, I worked at a video store, and I'd see all these random
right.
movies. Yeah, but so Marty makes it out, and you got the music cues, and you have him walking across the alley. Um, there's crime scenes. There's
Cop cars.
cop cars. The school's burnt down.
Well, he meets
Um,
Strickland. He finds the newspaper on the doorstep, and
right.
it's Strickland, and he's like, "Mr. Strickland."
It's got to be
Strickland's
the wrong
great.
year.
What's his name?
Yeah,
James Tolkien or something is the actor. He's great. He's so
something like
good.
that. Yeah, no, he's great. And again, a small part but memorable, like all the other, like a lot of the actors in this franchise. But he goes, you got about what do you say? You got about 5 seconds to leave with your nuts
With your
intact.
nuts intact, yeah. He goes, uh, three, but he racks
Yes.
the shotgun pointing at his balls.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's got his shotgun like point blank. Gosh, if he
and then the
fires that, he's
drive by. What
done.
did they say? Eat lead, Strickland, or something like. Oh,
Yeah,
no, he says eat lead, slackers. After they shoot at him, that's
right.
funny.
And yeah, so Marty's saved by a drive-by that's like it's like a tank.
No, it's not a tank. It's just a
Well,
regular car,
I
huh?
thought it was like a big vehicle.
No, I think it's just a car or a truck or
Okay.
something.
Well, they definitely have military grade
Yeah, they're
weapons.
they're using automatic weapons. Yeah,
Yeah. So you have that in that
which is not an
situation.
AR-15.
No, no. But
Just
you
throwing
see,
that a little bit of knowledge for those that don't know. AR-15s are
yeah,
not automatic. Moving
right.
on.
Um, so after that, you have Marty, he stumbles upon like where the clock tower and all that is, and he knocks into the homeless guy from the first movie, and he goes,
Rat.
Yeah, and he goes, "Out of my way, crazy drunk pedestrian." And
Pedestrian.
and again, that guy, he was on the bench in the first movie. Like, I like how they brought a lot of people back like that. Um, and the courthouse
I'm pretty
in
sure he was a crew member or something like that.
oh, maybe he was. I just know he's, definitely in the first one too. Um, and then you get the biggest mockery, which I didn't catch when I was a kid, but a courthouse of law is now a lawless
Casino.
casino.
Yeah.
And then, and so it's completely, and they're playing, what song is that they're playing?
It's I can't drive 55.
Yeah,
I don't know who sings it,
yeah,
but producer Nick would
right.
know.
But it's one of those. Where's producer Nick when you need him?
I know.
That would be a good little trivia.
Man, you just look like Max
So
Headroom. You were skipping, you look like
oh,
Max
I
Headroom
got
just now.
pixelated.
You're going
We'll say that was on purpose.
yeah.
um, so the casino is owned by Biff, and there's a shot of him on the courthouse. And when I was a kid, I thought it was like ice cream, but it's not. My
It's a
dad told
cigar, huh?
me, well, no, it's he's burning money. That's it.
Oh.
And he explained to me, my dad explained to me, some people that are so rich, they do that as like a status thing. Like, they
I
can
got
burn
so
money because
much
they have
money, I
some.
got money to burn, yeah. And remember,
Right. So
it's
that's,
Biff's pleasure paradise.
yeah, yeah,
That's not
yeah.
the devil.
Exactly. So you have that, um, and you have the bike gangs, and then you get to see a documentary when you walk up to how
Yeah,
great Biff is.
they show
That documentary is, yeah,
Mad Dog Tannen was his great grandfather, Buford Mad Dog
right.
Tannen.
Another foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then
Fastest
of
gun in the
course,
West.
he won his millions on a horse race and all this good stuff. But then here comes his crew. Oh, you got that too? Dude, you're on fire tonight.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
were on fire.
Yeah. Wins his first million betting on a
If
horse race.
anybody is only listening to this episode, I suggest you go to YouTube or Spotify and watch the
Right.
video and see all the cool stuff that Dominic has because he brought his props. He's bringing it. That's
I
awesome,
told
dude.
you. They didn't have any of this when I was a kid, you know?
Where'd you get that?
So it was at the same con. It was a Comic Con in Dallas. And I think it was in like 2017, somewhere in there. And I got the almanac, a couple of other things. But so, and what's cool is you can see the almanac in his pocket. I don't know if you can
Yeah,
see it on
yeah,
here.
uh-huh. Yeah, I can see it.
So yeah, so you
Adjust your
find
little
that out.
hey, adjust your little box because you're putting a glare, your little toy
Oh,
box right there. Your light. There you
okay.
go. It was
All
just the
right.
way it was hitting the light.
So no, thank you. So you learn the history, right? Biff basically used the almanac because the almanac, told you all the sporting events from the 1950 to 2000. He gave it to himself in the 50s, right?
So when he stole the time machine, he went back to November 5th, 1955. Is that right? November
Mm-hmm.
5th or whatever? And
I know it's October, but it's 55,
well, it's the same
1955. So
it's the same day that Marty went back in the first one.
no, you're right. November 12th,
November
1955.
12th, yeah. And I should remember that. That's my parents' anniversary. But yeah,
Oh,
it's
that's funny.
not 1955, but
Then
they got
November.
married in 1960 60 63 maybe? 64 is when my parents got married, but it was November 12th. But anyway, um
Maybe it's
yeah,
a junction point for the entire space time
yeah,
continuum.
right. Or it could just be an amazing coincidence.
um, but
I
go,
think it
yeah.
was
So that,
probably if you on the computer on the what's it called? The thing where you set the time? That's the where you put your where it shows you where you've been, where you're going,
oh, the
where
time
you
circuits.
the time
Do they
set.
call?
I'm
Yeah.
wondering if there was something that it has like a history or something like that, and Biff just happened to hit it and he went back. You know what I'm saying? Like it was
Ooh,
already programmed in there, and that's how he ended up going back. That's how I always interpreted it. It could have been something like that.
yeah. I never thought about that. That makes sense. That's how he would have logged that exact day because
Right.
he might have known to go back to the
Because
50s
Biff's too
because
stupid to know what day to give it to himself. I think it was just
yeah,
that was already in the time circuits, and he just hit it and went back in time, you know?
I bet you that's exactly what it is. Because why would he have chosen that exact date?
Right.
Yeah, that's cool. So, you learn about that. You learn that they have a picture of him with Marilyn Monroe, and like basically he was a ladies'
Yeah.
man. So they kind of do the Forrest Gump thing with
Yep.
subverting history. And then you find out that he marries Marty's mother. Yeah,
No! And that's when his henchmen grab him. "We can do this the
right.
easy way or the hard way." And then they hit him and say, "The easy way."
Yes, and
To
the
them,
screen's black when they
it's
do
the
that.
easy way to just knock him out for them, you know?
So, and then you get the thing that you like is Marty wakes up on the good
But
old
before you go there,
27th
the
floor.
henchmen are the same 3 guys from the first one. It's Billy
Yeah,
Zane, Casey Sizemasco, and then that other guy that I said was at that con recently, basically almost like an extra, but it's the same 3 guys that
that's
are,
cool.
his henchmen.
Yeah, so that's another thing. Like, I like that they didn't just recast 3 new people.
Mhm.
That's probably one of the reasons why this trilogy feels so cohesive is because you
'Cause it
got the same.
was.
Yeah, because it was. Because I hate when they recast. I can deal with a couple, but when you feel like there's no continuity, it can lose you
Well, the
sometimes.
only
But
one that really sticks out because and that's part of the reason why Crispin Glover sued. If you don't know the history and really pay attention, most people don't realize it's not Crispin Glover. So they did a
right.
good job covering that up, basically, making
Hmm.
people believe it was him when it really wasn't.
Well, and then
So
you still have scenes with Crispin Glover from the first movie
right,
too.
the archive footage, yeah,
Mm-hmm. Um, so yeah, so Marty wakes up
to his mama's voice.
to his mom's voice, but Mama's radically different now. You're
Instead of
so
"You're so thin," he says, "Big," because her boobs are in
and
his face.
right, and they're obviously fake. You
Oh, yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
um,
They don't even
um,
move. Like, whenever she moves around, they don't move, they don't jiggle, nothing. They're just like a big prosthetic that's just sitting there.
and the funny thing is, my wife walked in while I was watching it, and she walked into that scene, and she just goes, "Those are fake," and then she walked away.
Isn't that funny?
Because
I've seen a meme. It says, you're watching a movie when you're by yourself and it's showing a regular scene, and then it says, "When my wife walks in," and it's like a sex scene or something. It's like every time somebody walks into a movie that you're watching, the inappropriate time is whenever they come in. Yeah.
right, that's hilarious. But anyway, and then so Lorraine's drinking heavily, right? So she's at a worse state than she was in the first movie at the beginning, and she lives at the casino. They have a room there, and then Biff comes in, right? He storms in with his
Well,
guys.
he learns that she says, "Here comes your father." He's like, "My father," and then
Uh-huh.
in comes Biff, and it's like, holy crap.
Yes. So textbook of an abusive relationship, right? Like,
But
there's alcohol, there's this.
I cannot give enough credit to Thomas Wilson. I
Oh yeah.
mean, what he does with all of his characters, because 'cause they're different characters, I mean, they're all bloodline, but he
Hmm.
literally plays multiple people in every movie, pretty much,
Yeah.
at different stages of life, and I know they all do, I mean, but he, to me, is like, I mean, he's flawless
Oh yeah.
in
And he
everything.
and he even has to play like he's playing 80s Biff again, but he's completely different
Right.
because of the time situations. So yeah, like he has to play like go forward in time, go backwards in time, alternate timelines. Like, yeah, he had to do a lot of that.
And like I said, they
Um,
all do it, but for some reason,
mhm,
he sticks out to me as he does it best. Um,
right.
I mean, Michael J. Fox does it in the 3rd one. He does it in this one, when he played his son and
Uh-huh.
his daughter. But, I mean,
Right.
that
And the
wasn't too
old
much,
him.
and the old him, but it wasn't too much of a stretch. It wasn't that different.
Hmm.
Thomas
Right.
Wilson, he's playing, like, totally opposite ends of the spectrums of himself, and I don't know, it's just he is just brilliant in these movies.
Well, and he's the antagonist too, right? He's the villain.
Mhm.
So if he's not, the movie lives and dies on his performance,
Yep.
because he's the threat. He is the threat in the movie. Um, so no, that's good. And then you basically see that Lorraine stays with him because he takes care of her and her family financially, right?
Mhm.
Without him, her kids would be in trouble for
Yep.
credit cards and all this other stuff. And what's interesting is there's a deleted scene with his older brother.
Oh, is there really? I didn't see that one.
Yeah, there's a deleted scene with his older brother, and uh, he he said he comments, Marty, you're in the same clothes, and he's like drunk, because Marty's always in the red shirt because
Yeah.
the events are taking
It
place
it
so
takes
close
place
for
within,
him.
like it takes place within, like, 3 or 4 days or something.
Yeah. And so that's funny that the older brother notices that, and he's drunk and he's saying, it's when you see all the when he right before the documentary movie, I think, right around that time.
Oh, okay.
And he says, he goes, "Where's mom?" And he goes, "Same place as usual." And he points at the casino. So that's how Marty knew she was in there. This movie has some cool deleted scenes like that. Um, so after
So, yeah,
that,
he threatens to cut off
um,
all the kids and everything, and then he says, "When I
mhm.
leave you and come back, you better not be here," whatever. So Biff leaves and his crew leaves. And
Yeah.
so that's when he finds out his dad. He's like, where is George McFly?" And she's like, "Oh, they must
Mhm.
have hit you over the head hard this time. He's at Oak Park
Right.
Cemetery." So that's where he learns his dad is dead.
Uh-huh. And so then he goes there, he's crying out to God, he's alone in the cemetery, and he said, "This can't be happening. This can't be happening."
I'm
And then
afraid it is, Marty, all of it. Yeah.
yes, and what's cool is Marty and Doc are talking towards the end, and you just see their shadows on the tombstone. That's kind of cool. He goes, "Do you know what happened?" And he goes, "Yes, Marty, I know." And then they go back to Doc's lab, right? And I love how Marty goes, "It's like we're in hell or something." And Doug says, "It's hell, it's Hill Valley, although I can't
Can't
imagine hell
imagine
being
hell
much
being much
worse."
worse. Yeah.
Yeah, another good line. So then Doc does the whole thing. He says like the time continuum has been disrupted, creating an alternate. And then Marty's like, "English, Doc," and he goes, "Let me illustrate." And he does the whole chalkboard thing. And when I was a kid, I used to draw that out.
Well,
Like,
that's what they do in Big Bang Theory. They kind of mimic that
oh,
timeline
that's
thing that
cool.
he's talking about,
Uh
and
huh.
they try to explain it the same way that Doc is explaining it and trying to make sense of it all.
That's cool. So basically, what Doc says is when they were in the future, in 2015, Biff stole the DeLorean, went back in time, gave the book to himself at some point in the past. When that happened, the 1985 they knew was changed into a new alternate
Right.
1985.
Which is why they
And
can't go back to the future and stop him from taking it because now the future has changed, but that's what makes
right,
it not make sense in the beginning,
right,
why everything didn't instantaneously change around them.
right.
But whatever.
Yeah. So because yeah, you're right. If he goes to the future now, it'll be the future of this reality,
Right.
not the one that they were at the beginning of the movie. Um, so and then Marty realizes it's all my fault. If I wouldn't bought that book, none of this would have ever happened. Because then Doc starts to show him how he made his fortune, how Biff did, and Marty kind of had a more innocent idea of doing that. I
Right.
feel like Marty would have maybe made a couple thousand here and there. Like I don't think he would have ever went to the. But Biff's a villain, and you give the
Money
villain more
changes people,
power.
man.
Yeah,
Money changes people.
right. Yeah, I mean,
I
but
mean,
but
I would
Marty
like to
comes
give it a
off more
try,
wholesome.
but
Marty comes off more wholesome though. Biff
yeah.
was a jerk before the money. Um, and then what happens? So they Doc and Marty figure out
Well, he says, "How are we gonna find out when?" That's when he
when
tells
he
Marty,
gave it
"Okay,
to
well, we
him.
gotta go back in the time, but how are we
Mm-hmm.
gonna find out when?" And he's like, "Well, I'll ask him."
Mm-hmm. And a good old dad Biff is in the hot tub with two
With two
ladies.
chicks. Yep. Watching
Classic
Clint
villain,
Eastwood.
which is another homage to what we'll get in the next movie.
The
Um,
foreshadowing, yep.
Foreshadowing, yeah. So basically, I love that part when So Marty walks in and he throws the remote in the in the hot tub, and
He's
he's
like,
like,
we
"Little
need to
matter we need to
talk.
talk about Gray's Sports
Sports. Well,
Almanac."
actually, he says, well, money, right? Forget it. He's like, no,
Oh, that's right.
Gray's Sports Almanac. And then his face just goes blank. He's like, you heard him, girls. Party's over.
Yeah, and one of the girls looks at him like, "Are you serious?"
I'm like, seriously?
You know, yeah, because he's probably never said that. You know, he's always been a guy that gets everything he wants. Um, so then he goes, "Start talking, kid. What else you know about that book?" And they go into his office, and then Marty goes, "First, tell me how you got it, how, where, and when." And he said, November 12th, 1955. That was when, right? And he said, I just got my truck back because I rolled it in a drag race.
Well, no, no. Actually, what he says is he says November 12th. That's the day we went back. That's the
Mm-hmm.
day of the famous Hill Valley lightning storm.
Right. So Marty catches himself that,
Hmm.
you know, but then Biff says he rolled it in a drag race. And then Marty knows he crashed it into a manure
Yeah.
truck because he was responsible for
Like, I thought
it.
you crashed into a manure truck. How do you know about that?
I love that will be, because just even in that little thing, he's obviously a liar. Because you didn't have to lie about it. He didn't even have to bring that up.
Right. He's just a
Um,
liar.
yeah. So then, uh, what else do we get? He tells him
Well,
the whole
he's telling them
story
what's happened. A crazy old codger comes back with the cane,
with the cane,
tells
which is
me, how
him.
would you like to
Yeah.
be rich? And I said, sure. He says, is this
Yeah.
a relative? I don't see any resemblance. I mean,
And
he
it's
looks
him.
exactly like him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
He lays this book on me. He tells all this good
Mhm.
stuff. And
Every major
he,
sporting event till the end of the century.
right, which does that look thick enough, what you have in your hand to have every major sporting event for the last 55
50
years?
years. Yeah. No, you're right. It probably should have been way thicker.
Yeah, that's
Um,
maybe good enough for 2023.
yeah, I know, right? Um, but yeah, so then he tells him, basically the guy that gave it to him said, one day a crazy wide-eyed scientist or a kid may come asking you about that book. And if that ever happens, he pulls out the revolver, right? And I never thought it would be you. Well, Biff, you're forgetting one thing, right? And then he
What the
throws
hell is
the
that?
um, so then Biff ducks enough time for Marty to jump over the couch,
Mhm.
right? And he's shooting at him. Marty runs out of the room, and then he hears the elevator. So he goes to the elevator, but it's the henchman. So then he runs back,
And they
and
pull out their guns in this PG movie. They pull out their guns trying to kill somebody, trying to murder
right,
somebody.
exactly, yeah,
Oh, the 80s
yeah.
was great. Love the 80s.
um, and then you get the whole thing with him on the stairs. I love that bit, like
Yeah.
where he's jumping over, so he
Mhm.
can get ahead of them, and then he basically gets to the roof, right? And I love
Yeah.
the rooftop scene.
Yeah.
The rooftop
Well, he
scene
finds
is
out
one of the
that
best.
Biff murdered his dad, you know?
Mm-hmm. So he gets to the rooftop. He looks over the edge. He's I don't know how many stories above. Obviously, can't do anything. And then Biff comes in the scene, right? And he's holding the gun, and Biff's basically like, you have two options, jump or lead poisoning,
Yep.
right? And then
Lead
Marty's like, they're
poisoning.
going to match up the bullet with that gun. And he goes, uh, the police will match it up. And he goes, kid, I own the
Own the
police.
police.
So, and then
Yeah,
he goes,
they really took the whole money and power thing,
uh huh,
and to extreme levels because we all know that, the rich and powerful or rich with wealth comes power um in this country,
right,
unfortunately.
right.
And people
The
use it
system's
to
not perfect.
they use it to influence politicians, they use it to influence, lawyers, police, all that good stuff. Um, so they really take that and they just go really extreme with it. But hey,
In a
he's got so
PG movie,
much
by the way.
in a PG movie. He's got so much money, he can basically do whatever he wants.
Right. And then he gives that line, well, and he's like, and besides the point, they never matched up the bullet that killed your old man, implying that he was responsible for killing
Mhm.
George. And then I love what happens next. So Marty looks over, and then he takes a step back, and then Biff's like,
He was
idiot.
butthead.
Yeah, and then you hear the music, and then
Does it
Marty
say
comes.
butthead or does it say idiot?
I think he says
Says idiot. Okay.
Yeah. Um, and so then he walks up, and Marty's coming up, and it's because he saw the DeLorean. He's standing on the roof. Doc pops the door open, busts Biff in the face, knocks him down. I love that whole little bit. And
Hmm.
then Marty climbs back in, and then they take off, and it kind of jumps in front of the casino. That whole bit is great.
Well, he tells him,
Um,
"You're not going to believe this. We got to go back to 1955." I don't believe it. Yeah.
yeah, that's all that is great. So then you find out that they have to go back to, like you said, the same date from the first movie. This is where it starts to get real layered. And from there, let's see. That's when Doc says, "Oh, there must be some cosmic significance to that date,
Mm.
or it could be an amazing coincidence." And they go back to the 50s, and they hide the DeLorean behind the Lion Estates billboard, like Marty did in the first movie. And Doc says he's going to work on the time circuits, and he gives Marty the walkie talkies, which, now you would just be using cell phones because those walkie
And,
talkies would not have stretched that far.
and those walking, yeah, they had about a range of about 20 feet. You know, because
So
we all
that's
had that when we were kids, and they barely reached on the other side of the house, and they're like cross country.
right.
It's still
So,
fun. It's fun. Whatever.
oh yeah, and that's a minor thing. Today, it would be phones, but again, I wanted walkie talkies when I was a kid because of
Oh
this
yeah.
movie.
I remember
Uh,
for Easter one year, for Easter we would always just get an Easter basket and one little toy, like just a little something. And
right.
my brother and I got this like, because my brother's only 18 months younger than me, and we got this
Hmm.
a little spy kit. It came with walkie-talkies, um, binoculars, like some little plastic binoculars, and what else? Like maybe a notepad or something. But
Right.
every time I see this movie, it brings me back to that Easter when we got those little fake walkie-talkies that barely worked.
That's cool. Yeah, and I had gotten some walkie-talkies around that time too when I was a kid, and I remember that I thought they were cool because you could do Morse code on them.
Oh,
It,
yes, and they had the
yeah,
Morse they had all the letters, like,
they had
it
all the
told you
letters
what
on
they
there.
were. Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh. That's the ones I had. So that was fun. Especially again when we didn't have cell phones as a kid. You give that to a kid today and they'd be disappointed.
Like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah. You can't even get online with it?
Even the first cell phones when we had to text by pressing, like, number 2, 3 times to get the
3 times.
seat.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was a green screen. Yeah. Yeah. It's come a long way. Um,
Oh, but,
and
anyway, so at this
mhm.
point, they're in the street, and it's a funny bit because, like, Doc's running he's like, "There are 2 of me here, and then there are 2 of you here," and he's just running
It,
back and forth, and Marty's trying to keep up with
it's
I'm
like
just
like I said, it's like he's almost like on the spectrum, like I said
yeah,
before,
yeah,
because
it's
he
just
doesn't have
funny.
to do that to explain it.
It's like, "What are you why is he more running back and forth?"
And they're
It's
the only
funny.
ones in the street. Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
funny.
just funny.
Um, but then Doc opens his suitcase and you see he has money for like different decades. So that's an indication
He has to
that
be ready for all
Doc's
monetary
traveled
possibilities.
right. But it also shows you Doc's done probably
He's been
20, 30
around.
missions.
Yep, he's been
Yeah.
around.
So that's cool. And so, he does that and he goes, get something inconspicuous. And he gets the most obvious
The
thing.
most obvious thing ever,
Yeah. The black hat with the
a
leather
leather
jacket,
jacket
the
and
glasses.
sunglasses sticking out like a sore thumb.
And what's funny is when I was a kid, I was like, well, yeah, he's undercover. Like I didn't catch that was like the wrong thing he should have been like in 50s garb, you
Mhm.
know. But so that was funny.
So he's
Showing his
watching
age.
so now he's watching Biff in the street, the next
Oh, that
scene,
grandma.
and "I told you I'm going to the dance." Well, no, that's
When are you
later.
coming home?
That's what he said. The dance thing is later, but when he
Yeah.
meets up with those kids and he gets the ball and he throws, he's like, "Go get it." I mean,
Yeah.
they are just pulling out all the stops with Biff in this one. I
Yeah, he
mean,
can't even
it's
walk down the
just
street without being a jerk.
without being a jerk to somebody, and
Yes.
it's fun to watch. I mean, he's so good.
He's great.
I can't gush over him enough, you know?
No, yeah, and I'm glad they have that scene in there because it really doesn't contribute to the plot other than the fact that he's a jerk again.
It's
You know,
just
like
character development, man. It's just
right, but I'm saying today that might have been a scene that gets snipped because
oh yeah, yeah,
they always
time
want
and
to go
everything.
faster. Yeah, but I'm glad it's there because it showcases that even in his innate being, he's just a jerk.
Yep.
Um, so you have that, and what else do we have?
Well, this is where doesn't Marty try to
No, Marty goes back to the strip where you hear Mr. Sandman again, and
oh,
Biff
he
is
sees him
getting
pick
his
up his car.
he's
Right.
picking up his car, and again Biff is complaining about $300, and the guy even throws in oil cans. So it's just
Oil
funny because
cans.
yeah,
Well, you know who the mechanic is, right? He's the one that's in the future that says, "Come on, kid, throw him $100."
yeah,
It's the
I
same
found that
actor.
out through
It's
a
the same
deleted scene.
character.
Yeah.
Um, and it's also the actor who does Roger Rabbit's voice.
Oh, I didn't know that it was Roger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's Roger Rabbit. But and the reason I know about him is he's in one of my favorite horror movies ever. He's in Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight. He's in
Oh,
that
okay.
movie, that actor. But yeah, it's the same guy that he's the town mechanic, and then later on he's asking it to thumb $100 to
Right.
fix whatever.
Right. In 2015.
Yeah.
So then, oh, the guy's like, I can't even have lunch at the shop anymore, because he's giving Biff all these deals just because won't let it go. And then Biff sees Lorraine with her dress, right? He runs into them, and he goes, "Looky what we have here," just like he said before in the first movie. And he goes, "Who you going to the dance with?" "I'm going with Calvin Klein." First movie, like it's like an extra scene from the first movie, because we
Well,
didn't
he
get to
asks
see
her
all
to
that.
the, and then he's like, "That's about as funny," or "That's what is it about as
That's about as funny as a screen door in a
door
battleship
on a battleship?" And then Marty's like, "Screen door on a submarine,
submarine.
you idiot," or something like that.
Yeah. So again, Biff's always getting the punchline wrongs on his jokes.
Mm,
Because you had, make like a tree and
right.
get out of here instead of leave. Um,
So yeah, he's
and then,
watching all of this, and old Biff.
mhm.
Now you're seeing old Biff watch it, and he's like, "The manure. I remember that."
Yeah,
You know,
which is funny because who's he talking to? He's talking to
himself.
us.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. He's talking to
It's
us,
weird.
but it was
It's
just
kind
yeah,
of weird that he says that out loud, but yeah, it's so that we know. But then she goes, "I wouldn't marry you even if you had $1 million," and obviously because of what happens in the alternate
right.
timeline. And then
Someday you'll be my wife.
yeah,
You've always had a way with the
yes,
ladies.
that is one of the funniest spots in the movie because Biff
Get the
it
hell out of
walks
my car, old man.
because like what would you do? Like he walks, this guy's saying you always had a way with women, and he's
And
in
he's
his car.
like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, get the hell out of my car, old man.
Get
And
in
he
the
goes, "You
car,
want to help
Tannen.
marry that girl, Biff?" I almost did it like the opposite of
You
them.
almost said
Uh,
Griffin.
I can help make it happen. And he goes, "How do you know how to start my car?" And then he goes, "Just get in the car, Tan, and today's your lucky day." And then he's like running over the bushes
Driving
and
like a
stuff.
maniac.
Yeah.
This
Because
car, this
he's
just cost me $300. Will you shut up about the damn car?
yeah. And then you have that scene in the garage, which is what they were alluding to earlier, that he's talking to himself, um, and he's trying to explain the almanac to him, right? Because he plays that UCLA game on the
Yep.
radio, finds it, which nitpick, that just happened to be, like there happened to be a game on, but nitpick, not a huge deal.
After
So he
everything that we've just watched, eh, whatever.
there's more there's more logical stuff in it than things that don't make sense.
Yeah.
There's only a few things. Um, but he explains to him how the time machine work. I mean, how the almanac works, right? And then he goes, "I'll take a look at it." He just kind of throws
Goes
it.
in the back, and Marty's
Still
like,
not getting it. Yeah.
because it lands
Yeah.
on him,
And he
he just
wants
wants
to
to
just
grab it,
yes.
but he can't go
And he
anywhere.
yeah, and he can't go anywhere with it. And he said young Biff's still not getting how important and valuable
No,
this is.
because
He's
he's
just
an idiot. I mean, he's just dumb. At least
yeah.
old Biff has gotten wise in his old age and realized how stupid he was when he was a kid. You know,
And then he even hits himself in the back of the head. He goes, "All right,
it's
now make like a tree and
leave,
get out of here."
make like a tree and leave. You sound like a damn fool when you say it wrong.
And it's just funny because he's talking to him, so he can't even put up with himself. Um, and then
I'd probably slap myself too. I mean,
yeah,
there's no
I mean,
doubt. My
yeah.
17-year-old self. I mean, I wasn't an idiot like that, but you know, jeez.
um, so then they shut the garage doors, and he goes, "Oh yeah, one day a kid or a wide-eyed
Yeah, that's where you
scientist."
start hearing that conversation. Yeah.
Right. And then Marty's locked in the garage, and he calls Doc, but Doc doesn't want to take the DeLorean out in the daylight. So we jump time because then it's nighttime and Biff's leaving for the dance. So that was an interesting cut there. So Marty was stuck in there for hours.
Right. So
Um,
yeah, and Doc, by the time Doc gets there, they had just pulled out and left, and Doc shows up
mm-hmm.
and is like, "Damn kid," you
Yeah.
know.
And then let's see. Then Doc on his way back.
And you don't remember that? You never seen Dude, Where's My Car? You just said and then. I said and then.
Oh, it's been I've seen it, but it's been a while. It's been a while. That'd be one to revisit. Um, yeah, because I was at the beginning of that seven Ashton Kutcher and Sean
Sean
William
William Scott.
Scott.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, so then Doc's driving the bike back, and he runs into his other self from the first movie.
Yes, setting up the the line to harness the
Yeah,
electricity.
right. So that was cool because you have, the Doc from the 50s setting things up,
And he
and that's
hands
when you
him a
get to
tool, right? He's like,
he
can
goes
you hand me a
that
3/8 or
5/8
whatever?
wrench out of that
5/8.
toolbox, and he goes 5/8. Don't you mean three
Three
quarters?
quarters?
I love
Yep.
that little bit, and he hands it to him, and it's just a cool little moment because he's talking to his past self, right? His past self doesn't know it, and then he walks off and he's saying, I hope to bump them together in the future sometime, and he goes, or in the
Or in the
past,
past. And
because
he's
yeah, yeah, he looks,
like, something's
yeah,
up with that.
that's a cool little bit. After Doc runs into his 50s self, you cut to Marty following he's following Biff to the dance because he's in the back of the car, right?
Mhm.
And he's trying to contact Doc, but he's trying not to be seen by Biff. He's riding in the back of the Ford.
They go through the
And
tunnel, and it's like, how
yeah,
did Biff not hear him talking?
yeah, that's kind of a suspension of disbelief thing,
Yeah,
you know.
movie magic.
Yeah, but he does hear like the walkie-talkie mess with his radio.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he's like,
There's a little bit, so at least there's a little bit there. But then you get to the dance, you see George dancing, from the first movie. Marty's looking through the binoculars, and Biff's guys spike the punch at the dance. It's a typical, right? I
classic
mean,
50s move.
right. Yeah, that's one of those things that, it's kind of cliche, but they would do that.
Of
I like that
course.
little bit. And then Strickland sees them from across the dance floor. Of course, Strickland
And
would
they're
see
all
that.
like,
That I like. Uh-huh. And then Biff walks outside, finishes his liquor, throws it down, and he's thumbing through the almanac, right? But it's not really the almanac because they switched it
well,
with
you don't know
a
that at this time. So Strickland goes up to
right.
him and he's like, you had anything to drink? He's like, oh, he says something about the way alcohol
I
smells. He's
don't
like,
know
I
what
don't know.
liquor
I wouldn't
smells
drink.
like because
I don't drink.
I'm too young
I'm
to
too
drink
young to
it or
drink.
something.
That's it.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're a slacker. And he takes the magazine and goes into his office. Marty follows without, step by step. And that's where he realized once Strickland leaves it down there. And of course, Strickland has a little drinky poop. And he leaves the magazine, throws it in the trash can. And that's when Marty thinks he's got it. And it's ooh
Uh-huh.
la la.
Yes. And he calls Doc, right? And he goes, all I have is the cover. I
Yeah.
don't have the actual book. And he goes, well, where is he? And he goes, I don't
He's
know. He
like,
could
I
be
don't
anywhere.
know.
He goes, he could be anywhere by now. And then very clever, like this movie does some clever things, and this is one of them. He hears
The
the
commotion.
scene from the first movie when George tries to interrupt Biff messing with Lorraine in the car.
Hmm.
He hears that whole thing.
My old
He
man's
runs
about to
out.
deck Biff.
Yeah. So you get that bit again from the first movie, which is cool. And you're just getting another angle of it, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
And
they did a
so
really good job because some of that had to be recreated. There's no way that they had all those different angles from the original movie,
yeah,
but some of it has to be recreated, especially when he first hears the commotion that's what you're seeing behind him. That has to be a recreation.
right. What you're seeing, yeah. But then the close-ups are
The
definitely
close-ups are
like
definitely the
the
film, right?
same. But then they had to cut around it, right? Because then you get that guy that goes,
I think
"What's
he took his wallet.
CPR?"
Oh, yeah.
That same guy. That dude is hilarious.
I think he took his
So
wallet.
then Marty walks up and he goes, "He's fine. I know CPR." He goes, well, "What's CPR?" Then Marty hits him in the face. Right? He hits Biff in the
Yeah,
face,
he just knocks him out.
and then he takes the thing, and then the guy goes, "He took his wallet. I think he took his wallet." You know, and that guy does not look high school.
No, no. He looks like he's
I don't
about
know.
28 years old,
Yeah. Um,
like the whole cast of Grease.
yeah, exactly. Um, so then I'm looking. Let's see.
Moving on to the dance.
Yes. So yeah, Marty.
Well, he
So
realizes
Marty,
that the
Marty.
henchmen at this point, they start
Go ahead.
chasing Marty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what man, it's been a
So
while since I
so
watched it.
no, you're good. You're good. So um, okay, he's fine. He talks to Doc and he goes, "I'll meet you on the roof of the high school gym."
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I'm looking at my notes. He sees George hit Biff. You know, you have the thing with the guy that we were laughing at. And then you have, "I'll meet you on the roof of the high school gym." And then the music cues up. It's real exciting. Marty knows it's Biff's guys. They're after him, right? And he goes, "What's that?" And he knocks them and he runs, remember?
Yep.
And then at that same time, Doc is taken off and the flags gets caught in the machine when he flies off. And then Biff's goons go into the dance and see the Marty from the first movie.
How did he change so fast?
Yeah, another thing that makes this real dense. They think that's the Marty of this movie,
Yep.
you know, so they're waiting to jump him, and Marty's trying to stop them without being seen by his
He's like, they're
parents.
after me. And Doc says, well, get out of there. He's like, no, not me. The other
The
me
other
that's playing
me.
Johnny B. Good.
Yeah. And again, like this, like other movies have done some of this, but this was one of the first ones, if not the first one to do it. So then Marty gets on the scaffolding, right? And he basically uses the sandbags to knock
Yep.
out the henchman. Um, and then it's a cool little bit because then the other Marty sees the guys knocked out off to the side. And then after that, Marty, let's see. Marty looks over. Oh, there's a scene where Marty's listening to himself play, and he's like,
And he goes,
"That sounds pretty good."
bad.
I like that.
But after he
I like
knocks
that
out
little
the
bit.
goons, he goes outside and he
Mm-hmm.
starts to look back inside. He's looking at his parents. And then right when he closes the door, Biff is awake and meets up with him.
Yeah, he goes, "Hey, butthead."
Yeah.
That
He's
I
like, you
love
think you
that.
could? And then he realizes he's got the almanac. He's like, are you stealing from me?
Yeah, and then oh, and then
Marty
the
gets knocked out by
by
himself.
himself, and then Biff kicks him,
Yep.
right? And that's when he sees the almanac.
That's what it
Um,
is. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
mm-hmm. So then you have that, um, and let's see,
So then he has to call
Biff
Doc
kicks
again and
him,
tell him that he
right.
lost the almanac.
Well, Marty runs up onto the roof, and then he tells Doc what happened, and Doc's like he almost kind of just
Yeah, he's
almost
like
falls over.
he gets weak in the knees.
Yeah.
He's like, oh shit.
Yeah, that's a cool little character thing because I doubt that was in the script. You know, it's just the way he played it. I like that. Um,
So now they got to get in the DeLorean and chase
mhm,
down Biff, who got in his car and left.
right, and I love that whole bit with them. You know, they're in the sky and then they see Biff and they're getting lower and lower. They're trying to sneak up on him quietly,
Using the
and
hoverboard.
he uses the hoverboard to leave the DeLorean and kind of skate by to grab onto the back of the Ford. He's, you know, that all that stuff
It's
is
a
very
good
fun.
scene too because
Mm-hmm.
like how he uses the hoverboard against the wall and all that
Yeah.
good stuff. I mean, they really the hoverboards, they really nailed it. I mean, for 1989, for them to do what they did and make it look as
Mhm.
convincing as they did, it was really it was really awesome.
Right, and yeah, you have the back and forth with him trying to grab the almanac and almost getting
Mhm.
hit. They go through the tunnel, and then that epic moment where he puts the board up on the wall and flips over
Yep.
and grabs the almanac. But then he has to go all the way down the tunnel.
The tunnel that
With
seems to be 3/4 of a mile long.
right, and then at the last second, he grabs onto the flags that are coming down from the DeLorean. They take off, and Biff sees it, and it's played almost like an alien abduction. Like Biff's looking up, like, "What
Like,
is that?"
what is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like how
And
it almost
then,
like a
of
UFO.
course, he crashes into manure.
Yes,
I
and
hate
he even
manure!
that's great. That's great. Um,
He's like
and that's
crying.
and that's not the last time that happens to someone in his family either.
Well, I guess technically it is the
In
last
timeline order,
time. In
yeah,
timeline order, it's the last time, right?
right, in timeline order. But then we get to see something like that later. Um, so then he crashes, and then that's when Doc they go back to where
Yeah,
the
because Marty never gets back in the DeLorean. He's just hanging on.
right,
They get back to the street where Lion Estates is.
right,
He lets him down and he's like, I gotta go find a place to land.
uh-huh.
So you need
And
to
Marty
burn it.
starts, yes,
Burning the
he
almanac.
he burns the almanac, and then once he burns the almanac, the
You don't want to
newspaper,
be struck by.
yeah, well, right before that though, the newspaper changes,
Oh
right?
yeah, it
George
changes. Docs it.
McFly,
Yeah,
he's not murdered anymore, he's honored. Uh, um, Doc's not committed anymore,
he's
and then
commended.
commended, and then the what's a really cool thing, I didn't notice this when I was a kid. Remember when Marty takes one of the matchbooks from the casino?
Yeah.
It changes from the casino to auto detailing because
Yes,
that's
yes,
what
yes. That's
that's
what he's
that's
supposed to
cool.
be. He's
Yeah,
supposed
that's
to
what
be
he's supposed.
detailing. Yeah, I
Little
remember
thing
that.
there, I like that. And then yeah, that's when he says, "Whatever you do, you don't
You
want to
don't want
get
to get
struck
struck
by the."
by.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then
And then a minute later, in comes the what you call it? What would the Western
Western
Union
Union,
guy? Man,
which
Western
is
Union. I remember Western Union commercials. That's how
uh
old we
huh.
are. You
No, I
know.
remember that in the '80s, and it's kind of like an advertisement for them
Mhm.
because like they'll meet you in the middle of nowhere. Like it's been in their mailbox for 70 years. They're that dedicated. So basically, Western Union shows up and gives him a letter, right? And it's cool because in the first movie, Marty gave Doc a letter,
Yep.
right? In this one, Doc's giving him a letter and letting him know basically he's found refuge in 1885, which is exactly 100 years
Mhm.
earlier. And then there was some moments in the movie where it's flashed in 1885. Remember?
Oh yeah,
And
he's like, gotta fix that damn thing. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So then that obviously when he got struck, that's when that was on that year. So yeah, Doc's in the Old West. Um, and then
But I
Marty
love the
said,
Western Union scene because it makes you wonder if something like that were to happen. Like it's just kind of I don't know. It's neat to think about like how these people at Western Union like, man, we got this letter. This
uh
guy,
huh,
70 years ago told us to do this, and everybody who's ever worked here has been told the story and can't wait to see. To me, they would have like several people there instead of
uh
just
huh,
one wondering like if it's true, like what's gonna happen if we're here at this time,
right.
if anything
No,
at all.
no, you're right. Like that whole thing, and like they were around for that time, so
Mhm.
it could have technically,
And
So
Doc knew that in 1955 they were still in existence, so he knew
yeah,
that he could leave this with them and it would get to Marty eventually. So it would
right.
explain to them how where he's putting the DeLorean, what they need to do, and all that good stuff.
Right. There's a lot of foresight put into that. And then we didn't even get into the whole thing. It's funny that in this movie, there's a couple of DeLoreans in the same timeline, right?
Yeah.
Because you have
Well,
the
now there
50s.
is. The second he was struck by lightning, there's now there's
Yeah, now
no, no,
there's
you're
just
right. There already was. Yeah,
you had
there was two already. You're right.
yeah, isn't that weird?
Yep.
And then even in going into the next movie, there's we'll get to that when we get to it, but it's funny to think of those paradoxes. But anyway, after that, Marty says there's only one man that can help me, and he goes back to the '50s doc, and because that
Right.
'50s doc has just sent.
Ah, he's running up
Uh-huh.
and down the flames, and then here goes Marty. He sees him, he goes,
Uh-huh. He makes him pass out, and he goes, um, he says, I just sent you back to the future. He goes, you did, but I'm back from the
That's back.
future. You know, Great Scott, yeah.
I mean,
Um,
just think about it though. Out of all the stress and everything he had just been through to get
mhm.
this kid back to 1985, and within 30 seconds, the kid is back and he's like, I'm back again. And he's like, oh,
It's like Groundhog Day.
right. It's like everything we just went through the last week has
Mhm.
been so stressful. And the whole incident of hanging, trying to get it
He
plugged
he
back
risked his
in and
life
everything.
more than
Right. He risked his
once.
life and then he's back. I got to do it again. It's just funny.
Hey, I know. I love all that. I love all that. And just the idea of going into the first movie, like that's such a cool idea. So, all three of these movies are good, but the second one has always been my favorite for that premise alone, and then all the future stuff and all that. It's always been cool.
Yeah, it's really neat
Um,
how it takes place in three different timelines, three different time
hmm
periods, excuse me. It takes
right,
place in 85, 2015, and then 55. It's the
and
only one
then
that goes three different times,
and then you technically have four because then you have the alternate '80s.
right?
So it's cool. There's a lot. There's a lot in there. Um, and yeah, that's why it's one of my favorites. But it still holds up today.
Oh
We're
yeah,
talking
they
about
all
how
do.
good. Yeah, it
I
still
mean,
holds
when I
up.
was working at the school, I was there 2015, and whenever
Hmm
October 21st, 2015, the librarian, she put on uh, a they watched it. They watched the first one. They should have watched
Oh,
the
okay.
second, but
Yeah.
they did a movie day for star readers or something like that. Was it had
Uh
to do
huh.
with reading when they kept or the AR, something like that. So they had
Right.
to the parents had to sign a permission slip for them to watch it, but they watched the first one. And it's funny because
That's
she was
cool.
not a big nerd like me, and I was like, good thing. And the principal made sure that she's like, well, it's just PG. He said, get it, get permission.
Oh yeah.
And whenever she was, I was in there while they were watching stuff, and she just kept looking at me every time they cursed. Whenever they were, when Biff was basically sexually assaulting his mom and everything, she's like,
Right.
the librarian was like, "Oh my god, I didn't know all this was in there." Like, hey, baby, the '80s, baby, that was totally
Right.
acceptable for kids to watch.
And then you watch things like RoboCop that was PG-13. You're like, man,
No,
that
no,
could have been
no, no, no.
R.
RoboCop
No,
was
oh,
rated R.
RoboCop was R.
It
You're
was,
right.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
rated X when it got sent to the ratings, what the MPAA or whatever the hell that's called.
Right.
Um, and so to avoid an X rating, because X did not mean pornography, it just meant
Right.
it was
Heavy content.
adults only.
Uh-huh.
That's why they changed the rating from X to NC-17 because of the stigma of X. But then
Right.
Showgirls comes out, and now NC-17 has a stigma of sex, when
Because
it's
of that
really
movie.
just
Wow.
you can have something NC-17 for violence,
Right.
but now movie studios don't want an NC-17 rating because they think it goes hand in hand. Like the public perception is
Right.
pornography or sex, But
Right.
anyway, RoboCop was rated X,
That's
and
right.
they
Yeah.
had to and dude, they only had to cut, like, seconds. It was a total of, like, 3 minutes in the whole movie they had to cut, and they basically just shortened a lot of the, extra violent scenes,
Yeah.
to avoid the X rating.
Yeah. And now that I remember seeing the X version because there's like the scene where the guy falls in the office and it
Well, now
lingers on it longer.
you can watch the unrated version now. If you get the Blu-ray,
Yeah.
there's it's just unrated, but it was the original cut that was, rated X, basically. that
Yeah.
they that they before they had to cut it to get rated R.
Right.
It's pretty violent. It's pretty gruesome.
No, yeah, it is. It is. And
But
I've
that
seen,
is another video.
yeah, that's another video.
Don't give away what you can sell. By the way, I'm not making any money on this, people. Okay, I don't get nearly enough views to make any money. This is just for fun.
Yeah, no, it is just for fun. But who knows? Maybe one day,
Maybe
with
one day we'll
yeah.
blow up. We'll go viral. All right, Dominic. Well, I think we've talked long enough. People are going to
Right.
be like, okay, wrap it up, guys. So I'm going on vacation, but we'll shoot the next one after I get back from vacation, man.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right, guys. Well, once again, please like, subscribe. We're available on all podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts, YouTube. And yeah, with that, I'm going to say adios.